Welcome back to the Commanders Declassified Podcast, your home for all things Washington Commanders. Let's say what's up to the homies. Eric, how you doing today?
I'm hanging in there. I'm doing better than Brian. That's all I can say right now.
Yeah, Brian's a
I'm
little
coming
better
out of
weather,
what he's going through.
But he's a trooper. He's going to fight through it tonight for us. Brian, what's going on, man?
Not too much. Fighting off a little bit of a cold, but I'm here and I'm ready to talk some football. How are you guys?
Everything is lovely. You can check out Eric on Twitter at ETROD42 and Brian at Mr. Who, MISTERWHOO1 on social media platforms, primarily Twitter, maybe even only Twitter. So check us out there. You can find me at Declassified WFT. I love interacting with you guys. Don't get as much time as I used to do it, but we keep the conversation going. As we always say, let's start here. We have the 8-3 Miami Dolphins, the recreation of the LA Rams, or were they in LA at the time? But the Rams were the greatest show on turf, right? But they play on grass. We essentially have those dudes this week. Eric, how you feeling about this matchup with the 8-3 Rams? Dolphins. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, the Dolphins offense, of course, is what is all it's cracked up to be. Mike McDaniel, former Commanders Redskins assistant, is the boy genius. And he, of course, left here and got a job elsewhere, just like every other coach in the NFL did, apparently. But yeah, I mean, just explosive plays. I mean, Tyreek Hill, he's pushing 30, 31. He's still hasn't lost a step at all. Jalen Waddle's getting it done. Of course, Tua Tagovailoa is having a fantastic season. Devon Achane, he's the Sex Panther of running backs 60% of the time. He's healthy every time. He looks like he's a go this week, though. So that's another problem to deal with. But it's a newly retooled Commanders defense under the tutelage of Ron Rivera now. So we'll see what we can do to stop that show.
Oh,
yeah. Well, he was like, "That's all I got. I'm out. We're doomed."
Yeah, exactly. I don't know about you, Eric, but I'm excited to see what this Ron Rivera called defense is going to look like, because Ron in his press conferences this week has alluded to doing things differently, and I'm like, you're the head coach, man. Like, you can do things differently anytime you want. Why are you waiting till now? So I'm interested to see. He talked about getting the defensive tackles one-on-one matchups. Like, that should have been. It's year 4. Why wasn't that happening? These last 4 years. He's also talked about paring the defense down, making things simpler for the guys. Like, Ron, you are the head coach. You could have been doing this the whole time. Why are you waiting till just now? But I'm excited to see if it looks different, this defense. And obviously, they're a bad defense. They're not going to be better. It's not like they're all of a sudden going to be a top 5 defense. But can they play a little smarter, right? Can we not have so many guys running wide open? Now, Tyreek Hill is just going to be running wide open because he's just that good and that fast, and Jalen Waddle and the running backs that they've got as well. But can we just not do some, common sense in some of these big mistakes that we've been making? When Percy Butler sees a wide receiver running free, don't run the opposite way, Percy Butler. Try to go after that wide receiver. So that's what I'm excited to see, is if this Ron Rivera defense, who says that he will do some things differently than Jack Del Rio, if it actually will look different, or if it's just going to be more of the same old.
Yeah. Typically when this situation happens, though, it's really difficult to make those adjustments in season, and especially one week to the next. So you don't really see a lot of change, Brian. I'm curious to know where we think the change could occur. We as a collective here, I mean, our pass rushers are gone on the edges. So what do we do there? Our linebackers, and I sent this out on social media this week, like maybe this Ron Rivera takeover means we'll see more than 1 and 2 linebackers on the field, but who's it going to be? We don't have so that would be one change I could see if we play more consistently with the true 4-3 formation. And then we got to figure out what's going on at safety. But to your point, Brian, like it's a personnel issue in large part, right? Like Percy Butler as a free safety is not working. So what do you do now, right? Maybe like before Rivera would have stepped in sooner, you would think, right? But of course, Troy Apke lived on this roster for 5 years. Nobody knew why. I don't know. I just don't see what can be done. And if something were going to be done to be better, it would have happened already because it's not like Rivera didn't know he was coaching for his job this year, you know?
Yeah, I wonder too. Like, and we've heard some of the players start to leak this out after the beating against Dallas, and the week before against the Giants, that the scheme is complex, which I always find funny because the other offenses in the league don't find our defense complex. They find it pretty easy to solve, and to the tune of 30, 40 points each week scored against our defense. So I'm curious to see what Rivera does with it. Does he make it simpler for these guys? And if he makes it simpler, I mean, does that just mean it's even easier for the opposing offense to figure out?
Yeah, I'm curious about that too. Even a basic NFL defense is like trigonometry for like people who don't,
Yeah.
people who played at like a high school level like myself. So it's I don't know what's simplifying or over. I mean, a complex for an NFL defense is got to be like ridiculous. I know that was the big complaint back when Joe Barry was here and when Jim Haslett was here. They would always complain about defenses, and then Greg Minuski came in and simplified everything to the point where nobody could everybody just stood still basically. So it'll be interesting to see what that looks like simplifying. I will say that Ron Rivera was a stellar defensive coordinator in his time. Like he was an absolute, I mean, he took the, of course he oversaw Lovie Smith's defense. So, it was debatable on how much of an impact he had, although there was a drop off after he left. He was the defensive coordinator that Super Bowl year. He went on to the Chargers as a defensive coordinator and improved every year, ended up number 1 overall his last year, what led to him getting his job. So I don't foresee him overnight turning his defense into the number 1 overall defense in the league, but he clearly is a capable defensive coordinator. And I think to your point earlier, like, why didn't you change things? I feel like maybe there was a level of respect that he had for Jack Del Rio as a coach that he wasn't willing to, he was more willing to delegate and let him figure it out because, they've known each other forever. They played against each other in high school and college, and, they've in the pros. So they've known each other for, years and years and years. I think there's a level of respect because you saw Ron in previous years with like Scott Turner, he would step in and tell him to change what he's doing. You didn't see that with Jack, and maybe Jack's a little too arrogant to even accept that input. So, and that could have been, a piece of what led to the firing. Who knows? That's all just speculation on my part, but yeah, I'll be interested to see. But Ron Rivera, I think, is a capable defensive coordinator. And I think, simplifying things might be the way to go because, definitely, especially in the secondary, guys have been looking lost all season. So if you can simplify things and make it less about thinking and more about playing, I think that's a plus.
Yeah. Now, to your point, Eric, though, Rivera was a coordinator with the Bears in like Mike Vick's 3rd year in the league. And he was a coordinator with the Chargers 2 years before Robert Griffin III stepped into the NFL. So, I mean, it's a whole different NFL now. Really, it's 4 years, before he stepped. It's a completely different NFL nowadays to coach against and scheme against. And I'd also argue the players on both of those rosters were significantly better on defense than what he's dealing with here.
Oh yeah,
but
Luke Kuechly ain't walking through that door.
He's not coming anytime soon. I'm highly intrigued though. Let's see what he's got. I feel kind of bad too for Rivera. Like it's like going out kind of just sad in my opinion. Where it's like I feel like Josh Harris said to him, "Look, you made this mess. You call the defense. You show us what you can do." Even though we know what the end conclusion is here, right? Like it's just a matter of time. I don't like this. Just from a Rivera's perspective, personally, I don't like it. Rivera, for all his faults here, and there have been many, including player personnel decisions, which we could talk about. I feel like he deserves better. Like, yeah, look, guys, we're not changing our outcome of this season at 4-8. It's too late, man. It's over, right? So why not just ride the season out with the current staff and then cut bait? Unless
it was to the point where things had gone so far south with Jack Del Rio If that, if the rumors of like the blow up on the sideline during the Dallas game, if there's any truth to that, it's hard to say what's been going on behind the scenes. And I know that publicly the players aren't going to complain. I heard John Allen on the Junkies didn't have a bad thing to say about Del Rio other than the fact that it just didn't work out. But who knows what's going on behind the scenes. And I think if it's time for a coach to get fired in the season, or if it's gotten to the point where things are this bad, a change has to be made. It's definitely not going to change anything, but at the same time, it's like you can't, you're trying to sell tickets and you've got like 3 home games left. So maybe that has something to do with it. Who knows?
Yeah, the firing of Del Rio wasn't because we've got the fix now, right? We've got the solution. We're going to be better now. No, that's going to take place in the offseason. That firing was to say, look, we just saw the Giants and the Cowboys come in here and do whatever they want to this defense that we all thought was going to be top 10, if not top 5, because they were last year, and they were just simply uncompetitive, and they were, basically scored upon at will. And, you've got to, somebody's got to take some accountability for that. And they started with him, Jack Del Rio. Ron will answer for, whatever happens in the offseason right after that last game against Dallas. I think it's who we play last, right? So he'll answer for what he's done then. But you've got to show some type of accountability. Like, look, at some point we've got to move past this. This type of unproductiveness is just not going to be tolerated. And I mean, 4 years, 2 years the defense was good, 2 years the defense was bad. That's 50%. I mean, you can't be 50% good at your job. Then I guess you're probably not good at your job, right?
Well, then there's Ron Rivera, who's Mr. 500, right?
Yeah,
but well, okay. So, and I do want to talk about the Dolphins, but to be fair, in this conversation, I want to get more into this later. Everything you said right now is true about Eric Bieniemy too at this moment in time. Is it not? Players are coming out. He's coaching us too hard. This, and this, and whatever. And the results are almost identical to what Scott Turner was producing offensively last year with Taylor Heineke, right? So, I don't know, man. Like, again, I want to talk more about this a little bit later on. Let's go through the Dolphins real quick, and I want to jump back into this conversation if we can. So, offensively, the Dolphins have basically everyone in the NFL who's good. They have Tua Tagovailoa, who was rumored to be a hot option for the Commanders when Rivera took over here. He was really high on Tua. Stephen A. Smith put that rumor out there, as well as Todd McShay. And the rumor was he was overruled by Dan Snyder in this situation. I think that was the rumor. Anyway, Tua's got 3,100 yards, 22 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. He's thrown not a lot, but more interceptions as of late than he did to start the season. He's taken 17 sacks. Their rushing attack is really the key to everything that they do, believe it or not. They got Raheem Mostert. He has 785 yards rushing. He's averaging over 5 yards a carry. He has a long rush of 49 yards, 13 touchdowns rushing, 13 rushing touchdowns this year. Incredible. You have Devon Achane, who I was on a soapbox for during the draft season on this podcast, that this guy could change our fortunes, but did they listen to me? No.
He's been hurt half a year too, so which is what we were saying.
Yeah, you called that one. Go ahead. You called that one.
Yeah. He has only played 5 games.
Yeah.
And has 461 yards rushing.
Yeah.
5 games. He's long of 76. He has 5 touchdowns. He's averaging almost 100 yards a game rushing, which is insane. And he is just incredible. And if he is healthy,
5 out of 11 games.
Yes. Yeah. But if he's healthy, he is unbelievable. And I'm gonna say this. If he does play, he's the guy that scares me the most, because you know what we said in preseason, which is still true now? Stretch us to the margins. It'll open up gaps up the field, right? In a running game perspective, he makes me very nervous about what they're going to do. Now, when you get into the passing game, you have Tyreek Hill. He has 88 catches, 1,324 yards in 11 games, 10 receiving touchdowns, long of 69. He's averaging 120.4 yards receiving per game. And then you have Jalen Waddle, who has 52 catches, 691 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And then you have a bunch of other guys too, and their running backs do participate in the pass game as well. Obviously, they got a couple guys that make us nervous. Brian, put your DC hat on. Now you're Ron Rivera this week. Who are you putting on Tyreek Hill?
Look, Tyreek Hill is, one of those guys, you don't want to say he's uncoverable, but I mean, he's almost uncoverable, right? Like speed wise, just from a foot speed perspective, like we don't have anybody who can just kind of mirror him with his start and stop ability and then his just deep speed ability. We don't really have anybody who can do that. So you're going to have to schematically, do something to him. And, the only thing I can see that might work is I'm reminded of the AFC Championship game, Patriots Chiefs. Belichick put together a plan where the Chiefs could only get Tyreek Hill 1 catch, and then they later went on to the Super Bowl. I think that was against the Rams in that Super Bowl. So we're going to have to schematically try to take him out of the game. We're going to have to put a corner on him and a safety, and that safety is going to have to come down over top of him every time to discourage Tua from even trying to throw it to him. It's going to have to be that blatant, that obvious, and that apparent every snap, because otherwise he's going to eat us up. Our corners play 8 to 10 yards off the ball, and their offense is quick, precision, timing, ball is out. Tyreek already running in space. So if that happens Sunday, I mean, it's off to the races. You're going to be looking at DJ Moore when he had 230 yards on us receiving. I don't want to be funny, but that's what it's going to be. That's what you're going to be looking at. So we're going to have to do something to take him out of the game or disrupt him completely. I don't know if Ron Rivera is going to be that aggressive to do that. Ron seems very conservative and, probably will continue to sit back like Del Rio was doing and let that just kind of eat us up and let his speed and his ability eat us up. But that's what I'm worried about. And it's a big threat because wide receivers have been beating us up week in, week out here. Even no-name guys. I mean, A.J. Brown, the big guys, all the big names, they have their way with us. But even smaller receivers who, aren't anybody have their way with us. So Tyreek's probably going to have a really, really good day unless we do something drastic to take him out of the game.
Yeah, when you average 120 yards a game, there is no taking you out of the game. Like you said, like you're just trying. It's what Stuart Scott used to say, right? You can't stop him. You can only hope to contain him. And I'm not even confident in our ability to even try to contain him because, like you said, a safety over the top. Well, that's Percy Butler. He has been struggling. So,
Bad.
I think we gotta put up our bat signal and suit Troy Apke up this week and just let him run with Tyreek Hill. Not gonna work. I know. All right.
You're not playing man-to-man this week. I think this is where you will see the difference between Del Rio and Rivera. I think Ron Rivera is not afraid, not ashamed to sit back in a soft cover 2 and just make him, try to force everything underneath. I think that's where you'll see. I mean, Ron Rivera cut his teeth under Lovie Smith in that Tampa 2 defense. Unfortunately, again, we don't have anybody to play the middle linebacker, which is the most vital part. But, Jamin Davis has some athleticism. Now, I definitely think you'll see a lot of 2 deep safeties trying to keep things in front of them. We'll see how well it works. I would actually expect, and this is my dark horse pick of the week, I think Jalen Waddle is going to have a big week because of the focus on Tyreek Hill. I think Jalen Waddle goes off, and I think he's going to have one of those 7-catch, 110-yard games, whereas Tyreek Hill may not have his best game against us despite popular beliefs, I guess, or despite evidence to the contrary. I think Ron Rivera will I think they'll definitely play a lot of 2 deep zone and do everything they can to stop Hill, and I think that'll allow Jalen Waddle to eat a little bit more.
Man, I think they're both going to eat, honestly. Like, I think about like a comparison in terms of wide receiver core to this. It reminds me of the Eagles with Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. Different styles. Well, Smith and Waddle, I think, are very similar in terms of style. But A.J. Brown in effectiveness, not in play style to Tyreek Hill, right? Completely different receivers. I get that. But in terms of quality of the receiving core, it's the Eagles plus a little bit. And then you have the Dolphins receiving core.
But you had that single high man coverage the whole time, and they refuse to come out of it. That,
Yeah.
in my opinion, I think that's where Ron's going to make a change. I don't see us trying to play man coverage with one safety all day.
Yeah.
I don't see it happening.
Have to change that. So Tyreek Hill has had a couple of games where he didn't just go bananas. I think there's 4 games. New England, he had 40 yards receiving. Against Buffalo, he had 58, and Philly, he only had 88, and Kansas City, he had 61. Every other time, he's been well over 100. So there's some film out there about what you could potentially try to do against Tyreek Hill.
Well, that's Belichick. You said he only had 40, so that was his lowest total. And back in that AFC Championship, so Belichick clearly knows something there on how to kind of bait or prevent him from getting catches. But if Ron's smart, maybe he copies that game plan. But I think whatever we're going to be doing is going to be too late and just not enough. And so hopefully they just get tired of running by our DBs or something.
Yeah, this is the anti-BSJ game, because his speed or lack thereof is going to be a tremendous factor. But our one potential solution, Emmanuel Forbes, and his speed is hurt. He's got that elbow issue now.
Did you see that, though? Like, go back and watch that play. I totally can see what happened. He got his elbow caught up between 2 players, and it went the wrong way. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it looked nasty. Like, if you go back and look at it, and he actually went back in that game, but I think he's probably done for the year.
Yeah. Yeah, and so you got Fuller and BSJ. Man,
Danny
it's going to be a
Johnson.
long Sunday. Yeah, and Danny Johnson. Yeah, the running backs. Look, you can't stop the Miami rush and attack, and they do a great job of mixing play action with delay runs and things like that. But I don't like. This is a game defensively I like a lot better if we did have Young and Sweat here to at least pinch the edges and put pressure on Tua. The lack of pressure we've been getting outside of the Giants game is concerning, because now Tua is going to have a lot of time in the pocket this week to just do what he wants to do and push the ball down the field. So,
and Tua doesn't need a lot of time. He gets rid of the ball in like 2.5 seconds, under 2.5. Like, he gets rid of the ball quick. So he doesn't need much time.
But he will have it if he wants it this week.
That might confuse him. He might not know what to do with 4 seconds in the pocket.
That might be the solution. You never know.
Might, yeah.
So, yeah. Now offensively for us, this kind of feels like an offensive trap to me, because I think we're going to be playing catch up, and we're going to be behind big time in this game early. And that's going to put Eric Bieniemy into a constant throw mode, even more than he already normally is, which I think is bad for everybody on this offense, actually. I'm looking up the Dolphins roster defensively. They have Jalen Ramsey, by the way, who is a premier corner in this league. But go ahead, Brian.
Their star pass rusher, or one of them, Jalen Phillips, went down the last game with a big injury. He's on IR. So one less guy. They signed Jason Pierre-Paul to kind of be his replacement. But Jason Pierre-Paul is, not like he was when he was young and on the Giants and had all his fingers. So I think that at least helps us. But yeah, Jalen Ramsey in the secondary.
Bradley Chubb's still there.
Bradley Chubb is still there. Somebody else who's a good pass rusher as well. But they're going to have their work cut out for them against this Miami defense, because they're pretty good.
Yeah, and they have Xavier Howard too, who's a good corner as well. They look. This is a horrible matchup for me, I think, on both sides of the ball for the Commanders, based on the game situation I think is going to be at hand, our bad tendencies, and what Miami does well. This is a really bad mix. And if we're not careful, this can look like the Miami versus Denver game in week 2, or whatever week it was, not week 2, but whatever week it was in the NFL season. So I don't know what we're going to do. Eric, if you're Eric Bieniemy, how are you attacking the Miami defense, considering that we might be down quite a bit early?
I'm going to start making my old Scott Turner joke. If I'm Eric Bieniemy, I'm throwing the ball 50 times because that's what Eric Bieniemy likes to do. Yep. However, if I were a competent offensive coordinator, I said it. There's not a lot of good options. I mean, the Dolphins are giving up 90 yards a game on the ground. The 3-4 is traditionally difficult to run against. They've got a really good nose tackle and a good defensive front. They're not just pass rushers. So, I think you're going to have to rely as much as I make fun of it, probably on the quick passing game. I think you're going to have to get the ball out very quickly. You're going to have to utilize your running backs in the pass game, and you're going to have to hope for the best. And you're going to have to hope the defense gets a stop or two and does it. You're not behind 14 points early or 20 points early or 70 points late. But yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be this is the type of game that Eric Bieniemy should probably call a lot of passes, because he's going to have to, again, rely on the extensions of the quick pass game, because it's going to be tough sledding up the middle and on the edges, because the Dolphins defense is just good against the run. So yeah, you're going to have to, don't abandon it. You need it as a threat. You need them to think you at least might run it and maybe hit a play action shot. But again, your wide receivers haven't been getting open all year. I don't think that's going to happen. They're going to magically start getting open against Jalen Ramsey and Xavier Howard. So I think you're going to have to do, wide receiver screens, swing passes to the running backs, screen passes, quick hitters to the tight end. That's where you're going to live. And hopefully it's enough to keep Sam upright and put some points on the board this week.
Yeah. Yeah. You said it, man. I really don't know. If we get the ball first, I'm running the ball to chew the clock as much as possible. Just pound the ball with everything you have. Resist temptation to just start airing it out if we get the ball first. Now, if we don't get the ball first, then you got to kind of react to game situation. But even if we're down 7, maintain composure, right? Don't abandon the run game, and try to methodically move the ball down the field and see what happens. But that's not going to happen. Let's be honest here.
We're taking 7-step drops. We're running the ball out of shotgun on 4th down because, of course, we are.
The running play
can't be over fast enough.
Yeah,
the run play. Yeah,
yeah. Let's get back into this Benemy conversation now. That's the Dolphins. Oh, real quick, give me your score predictions. Brian, we'll start with you. What do you think the game's going to be?
The game is going to get out of hand probably too quickly in this game. Sad to say, but I think it is 38 Dolphins. Could be worse. 38 Dolphins, 14 Commanders. They're too good, too efficient, too fast for us, and we come in with the same game plan, and it doesn't work.
That's rough. But could be right. Eric, what do you think the score is?
I think it's going to be closer than that. I think this is actually going to be somewhat of a competitive game. It is a December game on a rainy turf field at FedEx Field this week. The speed factor will be affected. Mostert is fast as all get out too. They like to run to the edges. I think the Dolphins win because I think the Commanders are just terrible, but I think it's closer, and I think we hold them under 30. I'm going to go 27-17 Dolphins.
Dang, man. You are confident. I like it. That would be a win, by the way.
A 10-point loss is not confident. I'm just saying, all things considered, it may not be a track meet.
We do have one path. We have one path to victory. It is slim, it's rare, and it's probably not going to happen. But Ellie, you were talking about our pass rush. If we can hit Tua, if we can hit him a couple of times, we saw what happened to him last year. Every news sports show was talking about Tua, his concussions, him twitching, all of those things. If we can hit him and we can knock him out of the game, we can rattle him a little bit. That is our only chance. But if that offense, if he's just back there letting the ball fly in 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds, it's going to be a long, long day. And there's going to be another, big, ugly loss that we're going to be looking at.
Yeah. And I agree. And if you're getting rid of the ball as quickly as Tua does, that means you're dissecting defenses pretty quickly too. And if we're going with the more simplified defense per Ron Rivera, it's only going to assist in what Tua does well. So we'll see. My prediction, look, we lost 45-10, I think it was, to the Cowboys on Thanksgiving. The Dolphins are better than the Cowboys are offensively. I don't think they're quite as good defensively as the Cowboys are. I think it's going to be another 40 burger this week by Miami, and it could be much worse. I'm not a hater. I'm just telling you it could be much worse if Tyreek Hill gets loose, if Jalen Waddle gets loose, which they will at some point, and then the running backs also get loose. This could be bad. I think the fans of the Commanders right now are on the tipping point, or at the tipping point of just completely turning on the Rivera regime. I really do. I think we're starting to see the leaks come out of the locker room. I mean, guys, we've been here before. We know we're on the verge of things getting really, really bad. And I think this week we're going to find out just how bad they already are by the performance on the field from the group this week. So we'll learn a lot from how they play, because if it looks like they're not putting their all in, they're not giving the effort, and they already expect to lose and don't care, and we lose something like 50-6, we'll know a lot. If we are more competitive to what Eric said, then I think maybe we aren't as far gone as we thought we were. So my prediction, though, I think this is going to be a pretty brutal loss here, and Dolphins get into the 40s at least.
Do we think the players, though, like they can't be that like naive, right? Like they have to know that Rivera is gone. It's year 4, new owner, not a winning record. Like they've got to know. Like it's hard for me to think that they're going to get upset when they, all signs are pointing to Ron's going to be gone in 5 weeks, 6 weeks, however long that we've got left in the season. Like, do you really think that they're like, oh man, we got to do something to get this guy out of here? Like, it just seems hard for me. With the players, like if they weren't doing that against Del Rio, like I can't see them doing that against Ron.
But players check out, though. They do. And I think at this point, when you're 4-8, you're getting your butt beat by the Dolphins. You've lost 3. I don't know how many games in a row we've lost at this point, but and it's not competitive. Players check out, man. They start worrying about other things. It's when you start seeing the media leaks. Remember, BSJ was on social media either retweeting or commenting or liking posts about the defense, or ask Del Rio or do something, right? And then the players are going to different members of the media anonymously about Eric Bieniemy. It's all still there, which we thought we were past this stuff, right? When Snyder was gone, it's all still there, at least for this season. And I think once Harris and team really get to put their fingerprints on this franchise, maybe it will be gone for good. But I don't think it's as much as like they're naive about the Rivera situation as it's just, look, do we have enough respect for this guy to give everything we have and not check out until the end of the season? I don't know that answer. I think we'll find that out this week.
Yeah, they're professional football players, though. I mean, they still got to put stuff on film. I mean, every play, everything is dissected that they do on the field. So you're playing for a job next year too. You don't completely check out. Like I understand there's a certain point where you like a subliminal thing where you maybe not, as invested as winning, or you're maybe a little more concerned with keeping yourself healthy. But I think you've still got a job to do, and these people, this is their job. And a lot of guys, have that pride. Somebody like a Jonathan Allen's just got that pride of like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to put the best product I can. I'm going to expect my teammates to do that. And I personally don't think that the team, it doesn't appear that they've checked out on Ron Rivera. I don't think they've tuned. Like, I don't think he's lost the locker room at all. I think he still has the respect of the players, even though they just got blown out, and that could change. They still seem to want to play for Ron Rivera from everything I've seen and heard. So it's getting to the point where they probably know it's going down, but I don't think they want to facilitate that any more than they have to. So there's a lot that goes into it. And I personally don't think that, I know what are we sitting at, like a number 5 draft pick right now? I don't think we end up there. I still think we win a game or two and we end up in the 7 to 10 range at some point. And I still wouldn't put it past this team to win a game that nobody thinks they will, this week included. Like, it wouldn't surprise me for this team to get a win this week. I mean, it might surprise me a little bit, but that's the kind of thing that Ron Rivera teams do, right? They still play hard right until the bitter end, to the point where they screw up your draft pick the next year, but they're not, players aren't thinking about that. So, I wouldn't be surprised if, they beat the Jets or the Rams, or, they pull one off last game of the season against the Cowboys, or even this week. I don't think there's any scenario where they beat San Francisco. But it wouldn't surprise me to have 2 more wins this season. I don't care either way. I mean, I'm more than happy to not win another game and have a high draft pick next year. I hate talking like that, but it's just the reality. It's at this point, you're not going anywhere. It's better if you don't win, but we'll see. I don't see us finishing 4-13 personally.
Eric, to your point, I was reading an article because obviously the Carolina Panthers are a mess, and I was reading an article about David Tepper when he fired Ron Rivera, and the reporter who had written the article basically was saying that Tepper fired him midseason, which he did because it was after we played them. Darius Geis ran all over him, the Panthers, and they fired him. But he fired him midseason because, true Rivera fashion, he didn't want the record to get better by the end of the season and then have a case for him to stick around another year. So that's why he fired him at midseason that year.
How'd that work out?
Right. Well, he's still firing coaches mid-year, right? Like he's still
fired
doing
two coaches since then.
Right.
Yeah.
You're right. But to your
You just muted yourself. That was a good point too.
Yeah. But to your point, like, Ron could win some more games that he's not supposed to here at the end of the year. And even David Tepper, thought the same thing. And that's, part of the reason why he said, you know what, we're going to fire you mid-season, not at the end of the year where you can make the record look a little bit better on there. So we'll see how it goes for old Riverboat.
Yeah, he could win out and still not come back. As far as I'm concerned,
exactly.
Like, I don't see there's any scenario where he comes back next year.
He's gone.
Because at the minimum, they're taking away personnel from him, and if you're doing that, you might as well fire him. There's no way he's back next year, even if they win, they finish 9-8 and somehow make the playoffs. I still wouldn't bring him back if I'm Josh Harris. I just couldn't do it.
He's going to a nice Charlotte retirement home.
It's a nice area, Lake Norman. I think that's what's down there. Nice area.
There you go.
The best comparison to this is Jay Gruden's final year here. You know what the record of the team that year was? 3-13. So I think there is something to the last year of a coach's tenure and players and effort. We'll see. I hope I'm wrong, but we'll see. We will know. All right.
Yeah, but he got fired mid-season too. They turned it over to Callahan for like the last half of the year.
They did.
And nobody wanted to play for that guy.
The offensive line did. All right. Anyway, Bieniemy, we talked about his struggles this year, and I don't know if, like, from social media, I feel like some folks feel like he's getting a raw deal in this because the talent's not there on the offensive side of the ball to work with. But I think the majority of people think that he's screwing things up offensively and holding this offense back. Eric, where do you stand in the Bieniemy conversation between those two poles?
Yeah, that talent argument's garbage because he knows the offensive line is terrible and he still throws 50 times a game. So I don't want to hear it. Yeah, he's not doing himself any. If he knows the talent's not there and he's still doing that, that's on him. I don't know. We've talked about it earlier. Like his coaching style tends to rub players the wrong way after a time. We all know it's going to wear thin because he coaches hard. He's brash. He's abrasive, and that works for a while, and then it wears thin. And if you're not the head coach and you're coaching like that, and there's a head coach that you can go to that maybe is not as hard. I mean, that's more approachable, like Ron Rivera is. It may not work even better, and it's just not working out here. I don't think he's gotten a raw deal at all. I think he got full control of the offense. He got he was running practices. He modified the schedule to his needs at the beginning of to what he wanted to do. He's basically been like literally the assistant head coach. Ron Rivera has delegated a lot to him, and what he's done with it is, it has been good at times. Not all his fault, but overall hasn't been great. And I don't think that's an unfair assessment. I don't think he's gotten a raw deal at all, personally.
No, I agree. Like he has gotten probably the best opportunity outside of being a head coach that I think he could have gotten anywhere, because Bieniemy's whole thing was he had to get out of the shadow of Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, right? Because anything that happened in Kansas City, it was Patrick Mahomes, all-world QB, and it was Andy Reid, master coach, right? So he had to come to a place here where everything could be his way in terms of at least the offense, right? And that's what he got. That's what Rivera gave him because, we just talked about it a few minutes ago, right? Scott Turner last year and the previous years when the offense started to struggle and Ron would say, hey, go run the football. Ron hasn't been able to do that to Eric Bieniemy because he said to him, hey, you can run the show. You can do what you want because I can probably guess that Ron Rivera doesn't want to throw it this much. He has done everything his way, and it's been surprising how not advanced. I don't know if that's the right term for it, but I would have thought Bieniemy would have been farther along in his progression as an offensive coordinator in the understanding of his players' talents, their skill sets, how to utilize these receivers, trying to feature a receiver because he doesn't. He's very similar to Scott Turner. He does not feature wide receivers in his offense. He throws the ball to them a lot, but he does not feature a number one receiver or know how to or want to. And he absolutely does not want to run the football. And Andrew Wiley is his guy. He advocated for him. That's why he's here. And that was mistake number one. I can't put it any other way. He wanted that guy. Rivera paid him. And he hasn't been good. There's a reason why the Chiefs moved on from him as quickly as they did. And we saw it firsthand. I think he's had a very fair shot. I just don't think he's done a whole lot with it. He's done some nice things. I think the development of Sam Howell has been very, very good. I think it could have been so much better with game planning and how he calls plays. But to say he got a raw deal, I don't think people are paying attention because he's had everything that he wanted. Could you get a better offense? Sure. Could you get a Hall of Fame quarterback? Sure. Could you get a Hall of Fame tight end? Yeah. That's not how it works. You've got to make do with what you have, and he's had a lot of leeway to do it.
Yeah. I think it's hard, man, because Bieniemy has the 2 Super Bowls and his coaching style was what we needed after Scott Turner, right? Remember preseason, everybody was so hyped, and we said it on the pod that that's not going to work. Eric, you brought it up. That's not going to work over the long term. We didn't know it wasn't going to work this quickly, but one thing we say on this podcast is that the NFL is becoming the NBA more and more every single day. The NBA, you're not yelling at players. They're not taking it, right? It's not happening. They will go to the owner's office and get that coach fired immediately. You're not yelling at LeBron. You're not yelling at, as a head coach, you're not going to yell at the dude with the Luka Doncic. It's not happening. Those players run that league. That's becoming the NFL nowadays. So his style is a very dated style when it comes to player interactions. And you're seeing that, the backfiring from that. In terms of the offenses, so now, last year we had a coordinator problem in terms of the offense and facilitating the game plans and implementing things that were going to work and scheming for the opponents that we had. Scott Turner didn't do that. It was just this is what Scott Turner's going to do. He's going to do the run play and then he's going to throw the ball sideways. That was basically his whole thing. Now that Bieniemy's here, now we got a skill problem. I don't understand it, or a perceived skill problem. And you see these conversations going on Twitter all the time. Oh, our receivers are not getting open. But why not? That was never a problem before. What is the issue with receivers getting open, right? That's a question I think has to be answered. So is the scheme putting them in bad positions, or is it that our receivers really have regressed in what they did well last year? You couldn't cover Jahan Dotson last year if you wanted to when he was healthy. Now he's not getting open. Now Terry's not getting open. Chris Cooley came out and said, oh, Terry sucks at double moves. I don't where is this criticism coming from? And why all of a sudden now, Eric, is this a struggle with our skill position players?
Yeah, that's a good question. Bieniemy's offense features a lot of vertical routes. And just in general, it's more difficult to get open on vertical routes. And when they are getting open, it's dependent on the quarterback not getting sacked. So I think that's a big part of it, right? I don't know, Scott Turner kind of got made fun of a little bit for how much he loved running mesh concepts, especially on third down. And Bieniemy certainly runs those, but I've seen a couple times where he's running, the receivers have run into each other and Sam Howell gets sacked. But it's hard to say. I just know that this offense is a lot more vertical than any offense that like Terry McLaurin's been in to this point.
Yeah.
He's been very much slants, corner routes, deep out, hitch route, that kind of stuff. That's what he's been done. And maybe he's not good at double moves. I've never seen him try to run a double move. Like, I know that he's really good at leverage, setting guys up and getting them to turn the wrong way. He's been a master at that his whole career. Jahan Dotson's been very good at that. And maybe this offense doesn't rely on that as much. Maybe it is, more on, the speed of the receiver, the separation that they can get just by, taking advantage of whatever leverage the cornerback is playing at the time that they're playing it. I don't really know. There's definitely been a big change in how open receivers are. And it's also possible that the quarterback is missing open receivers, right? Let's not put it, you got a young quarterback who's been under a lot of pressure. There may be guys open on plays that he's just not hitting or he's not finding. He certainly missed his share of deep throws, but generally on those deep throws that he's missed, there hasn't been a ton of separation. He loves to throw deep to Bieniemy Brown. Bieniemy Brown's whole game is just trying to run past somebody. It's hard to do that in the NFL. Like, you got to do something to get past them other than just run fast. I don't think that's really been a problem for Terry and Jahan. Jahan's obviously struggled catching the ball this year, as has Terry. So there's a lot that goes into it. But I think the root core, I think the offense is very different than maybe what Terry's been used to, a lot more vertical. And maybe that's where the struggles are coming from. But that's just a guess on my part.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, it's tough to just sort of accept that, hey, Terry's forgotten how to play football, or Terry got his money and now I don't buy it. Terry's a heart and character guy. There has to be something here. Brian, you mentioned the development of Sam Howell. And I want to get into whether or not you think that development of Sam Howell is enough to save anybody's job on this staff. And has the development been enough of a development to justify long-term commitment to Howell? But I want you to answer those two things for me. But before I do, let's have this conversation about the development in general. So I felt like in the middle of the season, the middle of the part of the season that we've experienced so far, you saw progression with not taking sacks, right? There was a stretch where he didn't get sacked or got sacked once, for a couple of games, once or twice, a couple of games in a row. Now the sacks are coming back a little bit over the last two games against the Cowboys and against the Giants. Turnovers are still an issue, right? They're happening more frequently now. The last 4 games, I think he's had, correct me if I'm wrong, 1 touchdown, 4 picks, right? So like we kind of have this sandwich between passing wise. He has some rushing touchdowns too, but it's kind of like there was
touchdowns are your favorite now. Can't forget those.
Say what?
The rushing touchdowns are your favorite. You can't forget the rushing touchdown.
I do love rushing touchdowns by quarterbacks, but there was a period in the middle of the season where it looked like Sam Howell was on a really strong track. There's been a little bit of regression. Maybe it's just quality of opponent or whatever. But like, where are you in terms of his overall growth on the season, and then what it means for the long-term viability of Bieniemy as a coach, and how in terms of long-term commitment from the organization?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that you've got to look at is what Bieniemy was doing offensively with Howell for the first 7 games. It was essentially 80% 5-7 step drop, vertical passes deep down the field, and that was a sack every time, interception, sack, interception, and that was it. When they went to quick game, it was more efficient. There weren't really any sacks in that. To me, the sacks are a function because they happen in such a specific portion of the offense, and that's the 5 and 7 step drop back game. One, because we're waiting for these deeper developing routes to develop. Sam maybe needs another second to read it out, to find a guy. Receivers not separating, offensive line not good. All recipe for disaster. So I think you saw it there. So 7 games, that 8th game, all of a sudden, what did Eric Bieniemy do? That 8th game was the second Eagles game, to where they went more focused on the quick passing game. And all of a sudden we saw the sacks fall off, right? There was 1 in that game, and the next game 3, maybe 4 in the game after, and then I think the last couple were just 4 each in those games. As we started to see the 5 and 7 step drop rise in terms of being the majority of what we're doing in the pass game, you've seen those sacks rise. So to me, I don't call it a regression. I know some do. I don't call it a regression when it comes to sacks. Because to me, it's such a specific instance where they're happening. And if Bieniemy uses that as a majority of the offense, you're going to see it. Like, it's just that simple. The offensive line's not good enough. The receivers aren't good enough. And the quarterback's still too young to do any better at this moment in time. So you're going to see that. If you go, more quick game, you're going to see less of it. You run the football, you have more balance, you'll see less of those sacks. But it's a matter of, this is what Eric Bieniemy wants to do. So in that regard, the development for me has been fine. The interceptions, turnovers, let's go there. A lot of it is just, hey, our game plan isn't very diverse right now. It is just, we're going to drop back and pass every game. You go to the Seattle game. At the end of that game in the press conference, Pete Carroll said, yeah, we were surprised they ran it a little bit in the fourth quarter. Are you kidding me? A head coach of another NFL team said they were surprised that we ran the football in the fourth quarter. I mean, that's how basic and how predictable our offense has become, that everybody knows we're just going to drop back and throw it, and that we're not really, worried about the run, and that when we do run it, they're that surprised by it. So, that is, not a good thing for a young developing quarterback. When you're going to have to throw it that many times and the defense knows it and they're pressuring you, you're going to get some turnovers. And I think some of those turnovers, Bieniemy has to know, hey, we've got to do something different. We've got to get the ball out of Sam's hands quicker to our playmakers and not these deeper routes. Maybe we can run the football. So I don't know that the turnovers are indicative of that's him as a player. I know some people point and shout to, hey, that's him. But I don't see it that way. I see that as a function of, you're asking this quarterback, because the whole team right now, there is no defense, right? Every week you're asking Sam Howell to be the team to win you every football game. You're not asking the running backs to win you the football game or the wide receivers. You're asking Sam Howell to do it. And when you're putting that much on a young quarterback, I think, you're going to have to live with some of the results, and some of those are going to be turnovers. But he's not phased. He comes back out there and says, okay, I'll throw it again 50 times. No matter if it's Micah Parsons who's going to be hitting me in the head, I'll keep doing it. So from that standpoint, I think he's progressing well. I think he could be doing so much better with a proper game plan, with a better game plan, diverse game plan, a game plan that doesn't rely on 50-plus pass attempts every game. Now, in terms of, is it going to keep anybody's job safe? No. I've said this many times on the pod. When the team was put up for sale back in November, everybody was gone. All this coaching staff, this is all nonsense. There was nobody's job was going to be safe. So no one's going to be here. Bieniemy had a slight possibility. If he could have done a little bit more, showed a little bit more, maybe he could have made that case. But I think he's done kind of average, in what I thought he could do. He's only kind of shown, you just talked about the numbers being only slightly better than Scott Turner. If you wanted to stick around, you've got to do more than just slightly better than Scott Turner. So I don't think anybody's job has been saved other than maybe Sam Howell's job, in terms of, he'll be here on the team next year, whether or not we go, for a quarterback, depending on how high of that draft pick is, you might have to. So we'll see how that goes.
You shared an interesting tweet this week about the benchmarks of Sam Howell at this point in his career compared to other quarterbacks. And I think it made the rounds pretty well on Twitter, but they compared Sam Howell to Andrew Luck, Trevor Lawrence, and Joe Burrow, like where they were. And obviously, you're looking beyond like yards and touchdowns and interceptions. You look at like the advanced metrics, like the percentages, interception percentage, touchdown percentage, rating, or he's right on line with Joe Burrow, with a 2.8 interception percentage, a touchdown percentage of 3.8, is ahead of Andrew Luck, ahead of Trevor Lawrence, and just behind Joe Burrow. So you have to keep in mind where he's at in his career. if he's in year 4 playing like he's playing right now, then you're looking for a new quarterback. But you're looking at you've got a young quarterback, and a lot of people like to compare him to Kirk Cousins. I mean, look where Kirk Cousins was after 12 starts. Nowhere near where Sam Howell is statistically, competitively. He wasn't fielding competitive teams. So you got to take into account just where Sam Howell is in his timeline. And again, if we're still having this conversation 2 years from now, then he's not the guy. But if he's growing week to week and getting better, and you see like a jump in play, maybe you get a little bit better blocking in front of him, a different scheme, maybe some help from the run game, and he improves. If you give him all that and he doesn't improve, well, then it's time to maybe look elsewhere. But I'm fine with Sam Howell's development at this point. I am not really, unless Caleb Williams falls in your lap next year in the draft, I don't think you really take a quarterback next year. I think you're looking left tackle help or something like that. I don't think Sam saves anybody's job, but I think, he's already in his second scheme in his second year. So that's it, and he's playing the way he's playing. So moving to another scheme, I don't think is going to, I don't think, he needs to scheme stability at this point in his career, because he's playing well in his first year of a scheme. He can play well in his first year of a scheme next year. So he's definitely not saving any coach's job, but I think he's definitely earned the job here, regardless of who the new coach is.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I think Eric, I think that was a good point. If this was his second year of being a full-time starter and these were the same numbers, I think you'd have a legitimate case to say, okay, time to move on, time to trade up in the draft, or trying to, put some money together and go buy a vet QB or a vet free agent or something like that. But in his first start, being that, this is the team. Like, there's no defense, there's no run game, there's nothing else. It's him 50 times and a cloud of dust, and that's it.
What I'm going to say is I would not be surprised no matter what happens this offseason. New regime has different philosophies, different offensive schemes, different everything. And so they will make a decision they see fit. I don't know what that decision is. I think at minimum, Howell has earned a tenure in the league for quite some time, whether it be a backup or a starter or whatever this team decides next year or any other team decides in the future. He'll be on an NFL roster probably for the next 2 to 3 years minimum, depending upon what he does thereafter. But beyond that, I can't say, because, teams don't like holdover quarterbacks, generally speaking, when regimes come in. But you also have a young quarterback who has shown some arm talent, and maybe a new coach, new GM comes in and says, hey, I don't want to start from scratch. Let's see what we can do, because it's such a crapshoot. I don't know.
Yeah.
And
you
I really
better be right if you replace him. You better not miss if you replace him. If you come in, you think you can do better, and you don't land Caleb Williams.
It depends.
You say, Michael Penix is going to be better, even though he's 3 years older. Okay, but if you miss, like, you're going to hear it, and you're not going to be here long.
Oh, you're only going to hear it depending upon what he does at his next stop. If you do get rid of him, if Sam Howell goes like think about like the Heineke conversation. I know it's not exactly comparable, but like everybody's like, Heineke's going to Atlanta, take over. He sucks in Atlanta. Sorry, guys, he does. But if Howell goes somewhere else and is really productive, like think of I hate the Kirk Cousins comparison because it's not fair to either one of them. But think about Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins went somewhere else, was highly productive. Nobody really says we should have kept Kirk Cousins. Do you know what I mean? Like nobody's like, you should have kept Chris.
A lot of people say that.
Yeah.
No, they
Every
don't.
radio
But you brought up Atlanta, like Taylor Heineke. I bet. Do you think Atlanta's wishing that they could redo their 3rd round pick last year?
Who was the 3rd round pick last year? Ritter?
Desmond Ritter.
Yeah, Ritter.
With Sam Howell sitting on the board, you think they would take Ritter over Howell at this, like now? Knowing what they know now?
He's already been benched once.
You think Carolina would take that
Matt
bump from Mississippi? Yeah.
Matt Corral, right?
Yeah, Matt Corral sucks. Well, I mean, no.
Carolina would have taken Brock Purdy, and Atlanta would have taken Sam Howell if you redo it. Actually, Pittsburgh would have taken Brock Purdy.
Carolina had the chance to take C.J. Stroud too, and they didn't do it. If they had taken C.J. Stroud, they wouldn't have thought twice about what they did the year prior. You know what I'm saying? That ball was in their court. The coach wanted Stroud. The owner wanted.
But they keep messing up. I'm just saying, a lot of teams wish would have been happy.
I hear your point.
Like if they had taken Howell, they might not have even been interested in. They might have not have been picking at 13 or wherever, or 2 or wherever they were picking at. Hard to
Their
say.
weapons.
I don't think
I mean,
Howell wasn't ready to play last year, so maybe that's not a
right.
great comparison. But I'm just saying,
Yeah,
I
it's
bet you
tough.
Atlanta would redo it if you're going to sit a guy for a year like they did Desmond Ritter, and he comes in and stinks it up. When you watch Howell sit for a year and come in and relatively light it up, I think Atlanta would definitely like a do-over there.
I mean, Howell with Atlanta's offensive line and run game. I mean, that wouldn't look too bad. That
Of
wouldn't
course,
look
Arthur Smith would probably not let Howell touch the ball.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Arthur Smith would screw that up
He
big
would
time.
direct snap it to Jonnu Smith every play. Yeah,
I have no confidence there. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, it's hard to say, Eric. Like it's hindsight and bird in the hand and all that other stuff. But we just don't know how he would have
well, Atlanta's got
performed.
a dump in the hand, not a bird, but
They do. We'll see. Time will tell, man. And you're right. Like, I mean, no matter what happens with Howell, you want this next GM to be successful in what he decides to do at the quarterback position. But if we're in the top 5, top 6, or whatever, I don't know. It'd be tough for a GM to say, "Hey, I'm gonna ride with this other guy when I may not be this low in the draft again." But that's not my decision to make. We'll see what happens. But all in all, none of us agree, or we all agree that no matter what happens, it's far-fetched for Bieniemy to be with this franchise going forward, correct?
Oh yeah,
yeah. I
I
still, I'll be cool with whatever the new GM does. If he wants to keep Bieniemy, let's roll with Bieniemy and see if things change.
Yeah, I think that's the best way. Whatever the new GM decides, he picks the coach, and they sit down, they evaluate all the tape, and they say, we draft a guy, we trade for a quarterback, or we draft a quarterback, or we keep Benemy as OC or a quarterback coach. I don't know. I'm fine with whatever they decide, because at some point we need to have the right procedure in place. And if we get the GM hires the coach, they decide on quarterback, coaches, whatever, then I think that's the right process to move from. And, whatever good results we get, hopefully will come from that good process.
All I'm asking of this new GM, don't go the Jets route with a 40-year-old quarterback who was an all-pro. It's not going to work. Like, if you're going to go try to get an old veteran, just stay young. Stay with whatever you got and just figure it out from there. I cannot. I mean, look at what the Jets did. They had so many other options, and they decided to go sign a guy for $50 million a year who, hey, was great in Green Bay, but injuries are a real thing, and he's also old in the NFL terms, and he got hurt like on his 6th play of the season, and your whole investment is out the window, and you have no idea what you're getting next year because he could just re-injure himself. Because I think Achilles are one of those injuries that has one of the highest re-injury rates.
Yeah, you end up snapping the other one. That's what happens a lot of times.
Yeah.
It's like the other one gets injured because
Especially if he's talking about coming back
the old
early.
Junior Gillette situation. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Well, it's the Jets. Everything they do is wrong. They tried it the young way, right? They drafted Zach Wilson, number 2 overall. That blew right up in their face. That's why they had to go get the 50-year-old QB. So the Jets are just good at the Jets.
Let's just hurry up and sign Josh Dobbs. That's what's going to happen. We're going
to. He's already been benched, right? They're already talking about benching him now after last night. So
yeah,
he'll be available.
Yeah. Anyway. It's interesting, man. And I think it'll be a good offseason, a fun offseason anyway. Last offseason, we were cash strapped because of the sale. We didn't do a lot. I think we'll make some big strides this offseason, no matter what we do. But anyway, fellas, all right. If you're not already, subscribe, stay locked in, tell a friend to tell a friend, share it on social media, like, comment, all that stuff on YouTube. And we're going to get out of here. Let's hope for a good game on Sunday, but be prepared for the worst because it could get ugly. Commanders, it's almost over, guys. We got a new season, new ownership group, new front office coming to save the day really soon. We appreciate everybody. Peace.